Hebrew Israelite Bible Study. The Book of 2nd Baruch. The Messiah Apocalypse. The Vision of the Cloud with Black and White Waters. Chapter 53, verses 1-4. And when I had said these things I fell asleep there, and I saw a vision, and lo! A cloud was ascending from a very great sea, and I kept gazing upon it, and lo! It was full of waters white and black, and there were many colors in those selfsame waters, and as it were the likeness of great lightning was seen at its summit. And I saw the cloud passing swiftly in quick courses, and it covered all the earth. And it came to pass after these things that cloud began to pour upon the earth the waters that were in it. And I saw that there was not one and the same likeness in the waters which descended from it. Verses 5-7. For in the first beginning they were black and many or a time, and afterwards I saw that the waters became bright, but they were not many, and after these things again I saw black waters, and after these things again bright, and again black and again bright. Now this was done 12 times, but the black were always more numerous than the bright. And it came to pass at the end of the cloud, that lo! It rained black waters, and they were darker than had been all those waters that were before, and fire was mingled with them. And where those waters descended, they wrought devastation and destruction. Verses 8-12. And after these things I saw how that lightning which I had seen on the summit of the cloud, seized hold of it and hurled it to the earth. Now that lightning shone exceedingly, so as to illuminate the whole earth, and it healed those regions where the last waters had descended and wrought devastation. And it took hold of the whole earth and had dominion over it. And I saw after these things, and lo! 12 rivers were ascending from the sea, and they began to surround that lightning and to become subject to it. And by reason of my fear I awoke. The interpretation of the vision. The black and bright waters symbolize the world's history from Adam to the advent of the Messiah. Chapter 56, verses 1-3. Nevertheless, because you have besought the Most High to reveal to you the interpretation of the vision which you have seen, I have been sent to tell you. And the Mighty One hath assuredly made known to you the methods of the times that have passed, and of those that are destined to pass in his world from the beginning of its creation even unto its consummation, of those things which are deceit and of those which are in truth. For as you did see a great cloud which ascended from the sea, and went and covered the earth, this is the duration of the world which the Mighty One made when he took counsel to make the world. Verses 4-7. And it came to pass when the word had gone forth from his presence, that the duration of the world had come into being in a small degree and was established according to the multitude of the intelligence of him who sent it. And as you did previously see on the summit of the cloud black waters which descended previously on the earth, this is the transgression wherewith Adam the first man transgressed. For since when he transgressed, untimely death came into being, grief was named, and anguish was prepared, and pain was created, and trouble consummated, and disease began to be established, and Sheol kept demanding that it should be renewed in blood, and the begetting of children was brought about, and the passion of parents produced, and the greatness of humanity was humiliated, and goodness languished. What therefore can be blacker or darker than these things? Verses 8-16. This is the beginning of the black waters which you have seen. And from these black waters again were black derived, and the darkness of darkness was produced. For he became a danger to his own soul, even to the angels for, moreover, at that time when he was created, they enjoyed liberty. And became he a danger, some of them descended and mingled with the women. And then those who did so were tormented in chains. But the rest of the multitude of the angels, of which there is no number, restrained themselves. And those who dwelt on the earth perished together with them through the waters of the deluge. These are the black first waters. Chapter 57, verses 1-3. And after these waters you did see bright waters, this is the fount of Abraham, also his generations and advent of his son, and of his son's son, and of those like them. because at that time the unwritten law was named amongst them, and the works of the commandments were then fulfilled, and belief in the coming judgment was then generated, and hope of the world that was to be renewed was then built up, and the promise of the life that should come hereafter was implanted. These are the bright waters, which you have seen. Chapter 58, verses 1-2. And the black third waters which you have seen, these are the mingling of all sins, which the nations afterwards wrought after the death of those righteous men, and the wickedness of the land of Egypt, wherein they did wickedly in the service wherewith they made their sons to serve. Nevertheless, these also perished at last. Chapter 59, verses 1-4. And the bright fourth waters which you have seen are the advent of Moses and Aaron and Miriam and Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb and of all those like them. For at that time the lamp of the eternal law shone on all those who sat in darkness, which announced to them that believe the promise of their reward, and to them that deny, the torment of fire which is reserved for them. But also the heavens at that time were shaken from their place, and those who were under the throne of the Mighty One were perturbed, when he was taking Moses unto himself. For he showed him many admonitions together with the principles of the law and the consummation of the times, as also to you, and likewise the pattern of Zion and its measures, in the pattern of which the sanctuary of the present time was to be made. Verses 5-8. But then also he showed to him the measures of the fire, also the depths of the abyss, and the weight of the winds, and the number of the drops of rain, and the suppression of anger, and the multitude of long-suffering, and the truth of judgment, and the root of wisdom, and the riches of understanding, and the fount of knowledge, and the height of the air, and the greatness of paradise, and the consummation of the ages, and the beginning of the day of judgment. Chapter 60 verses 1-2. And the black fifth waters which you have seen raining are the works which the Amorites wrought, and the spells of their incantations which they wrought, and the wickedness of their mysteries, and the mingling of their pollution. But even Israel was then polluted by sins in the days of the judges, though they saw many signs which were from him who made them. Chapter 61 verses 1-8. And the bright sixth waters which through did see, this is the time in which David and Solomon were born. And there was at that time the building of Zion, and the dedication of the sanctuary, and the shedding of much blood of the nations that sinned then, and many offerings which were offered then in the dedication of the sanctuary. And peace and tranquility existed at that time, and wisdom was heard in the assembly, and the riches of understanding were magnified in the congregations, and the holy festivals were fulfilled in blessedness and in much joy. And the judgment of the rulers was then seen to be without guile, and the righteousness of the precepts of the Mighty One was accomplished with truth. And the land, which was then beloved by the Lord, and because its inhabitants sinned not, it was glorified beyond all lands, and the city Zion ruled then over all lands and regions. These are the bright waters which you have seen. Chapter 62 verses 1-8. And the black seventh waters which you have seen, this is the perversion brought about by the counsel of Jeroboam, who took counsel to make 2 calves of gold, and all the iniquities which kings who were after him iniquitously wrought. And the curse of Jezebel and the worship of idols which Israel practiced at that time. And the withholding of rain, and the famines which occurred until women eat the fruit of their wombs. And the time of their captivity which came upon the 9 tribes and a half, because they were in many sins. And Shalmaneser king of Assyria came and led them away captive. But regarding the Gentiles it were tedious to tell how they always wrought impiety and wickedness, and never wrought righteousness. These are the black seventh waters which you have seen. Chapter 63 verses 1-4. And the bright eighth waters which you have seen, this is the rectitude and uprightness of Hezekiah king of Judah and the grace of God which came upon him. For when Sennacherib was stirred up in order that he might perish, and his wrath troubled him in order that he might thereby perish, for the multitude also of the nations which were with him. When, moreover, Hezekiah the king heard those things which the king of Assyria was devising, that is to come and seize him and destroy his people, the 2.5 tribes which remained, nay, more he wished to overthrow Zion also, then Hezekiah trusted in his works, and had hope in his righteousness, and spoke with the Mighty One and said, Behold, for lo, Sennacherib is prepared to destroy us, and he will be boastful and uplifted when he has destroyed Zion. Verses 5-11. And the Mighty One heard him, for Hezekiah was wise, and he had respect unto his prayer, because he was righteous. 6 And thereupon the Mighty One commanded Ramiel his angel who speaks with you. And I went forth and destroyed their multitude, the number of whose chiefs only was 185,000, and each one of them had an equal number at his command. And at that time I burned their bodies within, but their raiment and arms I preserved outwardly, in order that the still more wonderful deeds of the Mighty One might appear, and that thereby his name might be spoken of throughout the whole earth. And Zion was saved, and Jerusalem delivered, Israel also was freed from tribulation. And all those who were in the Holy Land rejoiced, and the name of the Mighty One was glorified so that it was spoken of. These are the bright waters which you have seen. Chapter 64 verses 1-4. And the black ninth waters which you have seen, this is all the wickedness which was in the days of Manasseh the son of Hezekiah. For he wrought much impiety, and he slew the righteous, and he wrested judgment, and he shed the blood of the innocent, and wedded women he violently polluted, and he overturned the altars, and destroyed their offerings, and drove forth their priests lest they should minister in the sanctuary. And he made an image with 5 faces, 4 of them looked to the 4 winds, and the 5th on the summit of the image as an adversary of the zeal of the Mighty One. And then wrath went forth from the presence of the Mighty One to the intent that Zion should be rooted out, as also it befell in your days. But also, against the 2 tribes and a half went forth a decree that they should also be led away captive, as you have now seen. Verses 5-10. And to such a degree did the impiety of Manasseh increase, that it removed the praise of the Most High from the sanctuary. On this account Manasseh was at that time named the Impious, and finally his abode was in the fire. For though his prayer was heard with the Most High, finally, when he was cast into the brazen horse and the brazen horse was melted, it served as a sign unto him for the hour. For he had not lived perfectly, for he was not worthy, but that thenceforward he might know by whom finally he should be tormented. For he who is able to benefit is also able to torment. Chapter 65 verses 1-2. Thus, moreover, did Manasseh act impiously, and thought that in his time the Mighty One would not inquire into these things. These are the black ninth waters which you have seen. Chapter 66 verses 1-3. And the bright 10th waters which you have seen, this is the purity of the generations of Josiah king of Judah, who was the only one at the time who submitted himself to the Mighty One with all his heart and with all his soul. And he cleansed the land from idols, and hallowed all the vessels which had been polluted, and restored the offerings to the altar, and raised the horn of the holy, and exalted the righteous, and honored all that were wise in understanding, and brought back the priests to their ministry, and destroyed and removed the magicians and enchanters and necromancers from the land. And not only did he slay the impious that were living, but they also took from the sepulchres the bones of the dead and burned them with fire. Verses 4-7. And the festivals and the Sabbaths he established in their sanctity, and their polluted ones he burnt in the fire, and the lying prophets which deceived the people, these also he burnt in the fire, and the people who listened to them when they were living, he cast them into the brook Kidron, and heaped stones upon them. And he was zealous with zeal for the Mighty One with all his soul, and he alone was firm in the law at that time, so that he left none that was uncircumcised, or that wrought impiety in all the land, all the days of his life. Therefore he shall receive an eternal reward, and he shall be glorified with the Mighty One beyond many at a later time. For on his account and on account of those who are like him were the honorable glories, of which you were told before, created and prepared. These are the bright waters which you have seen. Chapter 67, verses 1-4. And the black 11th waters which you have seen, this is the calamity which is now befalling Zion. Do you think that there is no anguish to the angels in the presence of the Mighty One, that Zion was so delivered up, and that lo, the Gentiles boast in their hearts, and humble before their idols and say, She is trodden down who oftentimes trod down, and she has been reduced to servitude who reduced others? Dost you think that in these things the Most High rejoices, or that his name is glorified? But how will it serve towards his righteous judgment? Verses 5-7. Yet after these things shall the dispersed among the Gentiles be taken hold of by tribulation, and in shame shall they dwell in every place. Because so far as Zion is delivered up and Jerusalem laid waste, shall idols prosper in the cities of the Gentiles, and the vapor of the smoke of the incense of the righteousness which is by the law is extinguished in Zion, and in the region of Zion in every place lo, there is the smoke of impiety. But the king of Babylon will arise who has now destroyed Zion, and he will boast over the people, and he will speak great things in his heart in the presence of the Most High. 8 But he also shall fall at last. These are the black waters. Chapter 68, verses 1-8. And the bright 12th waters which you have seen, this is the word. For after these things time will come when your people shall fall into distress, so that they shall all run the risk of perishing together. Nevertheless, they will be saved, and their enemies will fall in their presence. And they will have in due time much joy. And at that time after a little interval Zion will again be rebuilt, and its offerings will again be restored, and the priests will return to their ministry, and also the Gentiles will come to glorify it. Nevertheless, not fully as in the beginning. But it will come to pass after these things that there will be the fall of many nations. These are the bright waters which you have seen. Chapter 69, verses 1-5. For the last waters which you have seen which were darker than all that were before them, those which were after the 12th number, which were collected together, belong to the whole world. For the Most High made division from the beginning, because he alone knows what will befall. For as to the enormities and the impieties which should be wrought before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them. And of the good works of the righteous which should be accomplished before him, he foresaw 6 kinds of them, beyond those which he should work at the consummation of the age. On his account there were not black waters with black, nor bright with bright, for it is the consummation. Chapter 70, verses 1-5. Hear therefore the interpretation of the last black waters which are to come after the black, this the word. Behold, the days come, and it shall be when the time of the age has ripened, and the harvest of its evil and good seeds has come, that the Mighty One will bring upon the earth and its inhabitants and upon its rulers perturbation of spirit and stupor of heart. And they shall hate one another, and provoke one another to fight, and the mean shall rule over the honorable, and those of low degree shall be extolled above the famous. And the many shall be delivered into the hands of the few, and those who were nothing shall rule over the strong, and the poor shall have abundance beyond the rich, and the impious shall exalt themselves above the heroic. And the wise shall be silent, and the foolish shall speak, neither shall the thought of men be then confirmed, nor the counsel of the mighty, nor shall the hope of those who hope be confirmed. Verses 6-10. And when those things which were predicted have come to pass, then shall confusion fall upon all men, and some of them shall fall in battle, and some of them shall perish in anguish, and some of them shall be destroyed by their own. Then the Most High peoples whom he has prepared before, and they shall come and make war with the leaders that shall then be left. And it shall come to pass that whoever gets safe out of the war shall die in the earthquake, and whoever gets safe out of the earthquake shall be burned by the fire, and whoever gets safe out of the fire shall be destroyed by famine. And it shall come to pass that whoever of the victors and the vanquished gets out of and escapes all these things aforesaid will be delivered into the hands of my servant Messiah. For all the earth shall devour its inhabitants. Chapter 71, verses 1-3. And the Holy Land shall have mercy on its own, and it shall protect its inhabitants at that time. This is the vision which you have seen, and this is the interpretation. For I have come to tell you these things, because your prayer has been heard with the Most High. Chapter 72, verses 1-6. Hear now also regarding the bright lightning which is to come at the consummation after these black waters, this is the word. After the signs have come, of which you were told before, when the nations become turbulent, and the time of my Messiah is come, He shall both summon all the nations, and some of them he shall spare, and some of them he shall slay. These things therefore shall come upon the nations which are to be spared by him. Every nation, which knows not Israel and has not trodden down the seed of Jacob, shall indeed be spared. And this because some out of every nation shall be subjected to your people. But all those who have ruled over you, or have known you, shall be given up to the sword. Chapter 73, verses 1-4. And it shall come to pass, when he has brought low everything that is in the world and has sat down in peace for the age on the throne of his kingdom, that joy shall then be revealed, and rest shall appear. And then healing shall descend in dew, and disease shall withdraw, and anxiety and anguish and lamentation pass from amongst men, and gladness proceed through the whole earth. And no one shall again die untimely, nor shall any adversity suddenly befall. And judgments, and abusive talk, and contentions, and revenges, and blood, and passions, and envy, and hatred, and whatsoever things are like these shall go into condemnation when they are removed. Verses 5-7. For it is these very things which have filled this world with evils, and on account of these the life of man has been greatly troubled. And wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto men, and asps and dragons shall come forth from their holes to submit themselves to a little child, and women shall no longer then have pain when they bear, nor shall they suffer torment when they yield the fruit of the womb. Chapter 74, verses 1-4. And it shall come to pass in those days that the reapers shall not grow weary, nor those that build be toil war, for the works shall of themselves speedily advance together with those who do them in much tranquility. For that time is the consummation of that which is corruptible, and the beginning of that which is not corruptible. Therefore those things which were predicted shall belong to it, therefore, it is far away from evils, and near to those things which die not. This is the bright lightning which came after the last dark waters. Shalom.